Have you ever felt like you're shouting into an endless void when you pray, desperately waiting for God to answer, yet hearing nothing but deafening silence? You're not alone in this struggle. Countless believers around the world wake up each morning, fall to their knees in earnest prayer, and walk away feeling spiritually disconnected, wondering if their words even reach heaven. But what if I told you that the real problem isn't God's silence? It's where you've been trained to listen. For generations, we've been taught to look upward, to search the skies, to imagine God sitting on some distant throne beyond the stars, far removed from our daily struggles and questions. We've learned to perceive divine communication as something rare, something reserved for prophets and saints, something that requires perfect conditions and extraordinary spiritual gifts. Has this ever happened to you? You face a crisis, perhaps a difficult decision, a health concern, or a relationship falling apart, and you cry out for guidance, yet the answer feels impossibly out of reach, as if God is speaking a language you've forgotten how to understand. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The truth that Smith Wigglesworth understood so profoundly, the revelation that transformed his entire ministry and the lives of countless people he touched, is this: we've been searching in the wrong direction all along. The kingdom of heaven, that sacred space where God's voice rings crystal clear, isn't located somewhere beyond the clouds waiting for you to earn access through perfect behavior or religious performance. It's not a reward for the spiritually elite or a destination you'll only reach after death. The kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness that exists within you right now, at this very moment as you're watching this video. Stay with me until the end of this teaching, because what you're about to discover has the power to revolutionize not just your prayer life but your entire relationship with divine guidance. When you grasp this fundamental shift in understanding, when you stop straining to hear a distant deity and instead awaken to the God who speaks from the very center of your being, everything changes. The anxiety that clouds your judgment begins to lift. The confusion that paralyzes your decisions starts to dissolve. The spiritual frustration that has haunted your faith journey transforms into confident communion. Imagine approaching each day knowing that divine wisdom isn't something you need to beg for or wait for. It's already present, already speaking, already guiding you from within. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because it contradicts much of what traditional religious teaching has told you about how to connect with God. The 5 daily shifts we're exploring together aren't complicated rituals or theological mysteries. They're practical adjustments in where you position your awareness to receive what has been broadcasting within you all along. So the question becomes, are you ready to stop searching for God in all the wrong places and finally discover the divine voice that has been whispering within you since the moment you were born? Because once you make this shift, the transformation begins with something so simple that most people dismiss it as too easy to be powerful. Yet Smith Wigglesworth understood that the greatest spiritual breakthroughs often come through the smallest, most consistent practices. The first shift in hearing God's voice clearly isn't about mastering complex meditation techniques or studying ancient texts for hours. It's about developing what he called the practice of presence, a continuous awareness of the divine kingdom that already exists within you. Here's how this works in your actual daily life. Tomorrow morning, before your feet even touch the floor, before you check your phone or start replaying yesterday's worries, pause for just one moment. In that sacred space between sleep and waking, acknowledge this simple truth: the kingdom of heaven is within me right now. That's it. No elaborate ritual, no perfect spiritual posture, just a quiet recognition of what has always been true. This tiny decision creates ripples that extend far beyond that moment, establishing a mindset that shapes how you'll respond to everything the day brings. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so these teachings on hearing God's voice continue showing up in your journey. Each video explores another dimension of living from kingdom consciousness in practical, everyday ways. Think of this recognition as a tuning fork for your consciousness. When a musician strikes a tuning fork, it vibrates at a precise frequency, and when held near an instrument, it causes the strings to resonate at that same frequency. Your morning acknowledgement works exactly the same way. It adjusts your spiritual frequency to align with the divine communication that's already broadcasting within you. Throughout your day, whether you're stuck in traffic, sitting in a difficult meeting, or making dinner, you can return to this awareness. The kingdom is here. God is speaking now. The guidance I need is already present within my consciousness. Now, I want to go even deeper into what might be the most overlooked truth on the entire spiritual path, and it's something that goes against everything our culture teaches us about achievement and success. The hidden truth behind spiritual transformation isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. This revelation contradicts the dramatic narrative we've been sold about spiritual growth, where we imagine that breakthrough moments come through marathon prayer sessions or extraordinary religious experiences. But here's the reality that Wigglesworth discovered through decades of ministry. 5 minutes of daily presence practice will transform your life far more powerfully than occasional hours of desperate spiritual effort when crisis strikes. Your spiritual receptors, your ability to perceive divine guidance, are being fine-tuned through regular gentle adjustments rather than occasional intense overhauls. It's the difference between watering a plant daily with a small cup versus drowning it once a month with a fire hose. One approach creates sustainable growth. The other creates chaos. The impact of this understanding on your journey cannot be overstated because it removes the pressure of perfection and replaces it with the power of persistence. Behind the scenes of every person who hears God's voice with clarity, you'll find this same pattern. Small, consistent returns to inner awareness rather than sporadic bursts of religious intensity. If this understanding is beginning to shift something in your perspective, write in the comments. Consistency transforms everything. The journey of hearing God's voice more clearly extends far beyond your morning quiet time or Sunday worship. The real test, the actual proving ground for this practice, happens in those unexpected moments when life throws you curveballs. Consider what happens when your boss publicly criticizes your work in front of colleagues, when you're stuck in traffic that's making you late for an important meeting, or when you open the mail to find an unexpected bill that throws your entire budget into chaos. These are the precise decision points where most people react from pure instinct, fear, frustration, anger, completely forgetting any spiritual awareness they might have cultivated during calmer moments. But here's where the practice of presence reveals its genuine power. Even 30 seconds, just half a minute of returning to the inner kingdom before responding can completely transform these situations. Instead of immediately reacting from fear or frustration, you pause. You recognize the truth that exists beyond material appearances. You remember that the kingdom of heaven is within you right now, even in this challenging moment, and that divine guidance is available regardless of external circumstances. This isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about accessing a deeper reality that provides perspective and wisdom that your reactive mind simply cannot reach. The mindset shift this creates is profound. You begin approaching challenges not as threats to be frantically defended against, but as opportunities to witness divine guidance operating in real time. Behind the scenes of what appears to be chaos, there's an intelligence speaking, offering insight, revealing pathways forward that weren't visible from the space of pure reaction. The impact on your decision-making, your relationships, your overall sense of peace becomes undeniable as you practice this consistently. Now let me show you how this same principle applies to one of life's most anxiety-producing areas, your physical health. When symptoms appear, whether it's minor discomfort or a serious diagnosis, our conditioned response follows a predictable pattern. Fear floods in first, often before we even have complete information. Then comes the scramble for solutions, the frantic Googling, the worst-case scenario thinking that spirals our consciousness into darker and darker places. This natural reaction, while understandable, often drowns out the very spiritual guidance we need most in these moments. The second daily shift involves approaching health challenges with a fundamentally transformed awareness. Instead of allowing fear to dominate your consciousness from the first symptom, your first response becomes turning within to recognize this truth. In the kingdom of heaven within you, there is only wholeness and divine perfection. This recognition isn't about denying medical reality or refusing appropriate treatment. Smith Wigglesworth himself never suggested ignoring practical wisdom or professional medical care. What he discovered was that when you first establish spiritual awareness, when you create that sacred space of inner recognition before fear takes over, God's voice can speak clearly about your well-being in ways that integrate both spiritual truth and practical action. This approach creates a completely different journey through health challenges. The revelations that come aren't about magical thinking, but about accessing wisdom that fear blocks. If you've experienced moments where inner peace arrived precisely when health concerns felt most overwhelming, write in the comments, "Peace guides healing." The transformation we've been exploring extends into another arena where God's voice becomes almost impossible to hear: your financial life. Money has this unique ability to trigger our deepest survival fears, creating so much mental and emotional static that divine guidance gets completely drowned out. Think about what happens in your consciousness when an unexpected expense appears, when income suddenly decreases, or when you're facing a major financial decision. Fear floods in first, doesn't it? That primal anxiety about security and survival that seems to bypass all rational thought and spiritual awareness. The third daily shift involves recognizing something that runs completely counter to everything the world teaches about money. Divine substance is infinite and omnipresent. Your experience of financial supply primarily reflects your consciousness, not external economic conditions. This isn't magical thinking or denying practical reality. It's understanding that when you approach money decisions from a consciousness of scarcity and panic, you literally cannot access the same quality of guidance and insight available when you approach them from spiritual awareness and trust. Here's what this looks like in actual practice. When that unexpected bill arrives, or when you're trying to decide whether to take a new job or make an investment, your first response becomes returning to that inner kingdom. You recognize that God's voice is speaking guidance even now, in this circumstance. This doesn't mean ignoring practical budgeting or financial planning. What it means is bringing a completely different quality of presence to these activities. The hidden truth behind financial freedom isn't found in the numbers in your bank account, but in the awareness operating in your consciousness as you engage with money. The impact of this shift often begins subtly. You might notice less emotional reactivity when bills arrive. Unexpected opportunities for increased income start appearing. Creative solutions to financial challenges emerge from seemingly nowhere. These aren't coincidences, but revelations of what becomes possible when you position yourself to hear divine wisdom about provision, rather than making decisions from pure fear. Now let me take you into what might be the most complex arena for hearing God's voice clearly: your relationships. Behind the scenes of nearly every spiritual struggle, you'll find relationship dynamics that complicate our ability to discern divine guidance. We approach connections with others seeking validation, security, or fulfillment from them, and this creates so much emotional noise that spiritual receptors become completely clouded. The fourth shift transforms this entire relational landscape. When you genuinely recognize the divine presence speaking within yourself, something remarkable happens. You naturally begin perceiving that same presence in others. This doesn't magically dissolve relationship challenges or turn difficult people into easy ones. What it does is provide an entirely different foundation for navigating human connection. Instead of approaching relationships from need or expectation, you approach them from spiritual awareness that sees beyond surface behaviors to the deeper reality. Think about how this plays out when someone close to you says something hurtful, or when a friend disappoints you. Your immediate impulse might be defensive reaction or withdrawal, but that pause, that return to kingdom consciousness, creates a moment where you can hear guidance beyond the emotional trigger. The catalyst for relationship transformation isn't finding perfect people who never challenge you. It's developing perfect listening, the ability to hear God's voice speaking through even difficult interactions, revealing insights about yourself and others that remain hidden behind reactive patterns. If this resonates with your journey through relationships, put down in the comments, "Listening transforms connection." This journey of inner recognition might seem deeply personal, and in many ways it is. But here's something Smith Wigglesworth understood that accelerates this entire process. You weren't meant to walk this path alone. While the recognition of the kingdom within is ultimately something only you can experience for yourself, seeking authentic spiritual community becomes essential as your awareness deepens. There's a hidden dynamic at work when genuine seekers gather together that differs fundamentally from conventional social connections or even traditional church attendance. When you find others who truly understand this practice of presence, who value inner recognition over religious performance, something remarkable happens. The collective field of awareness that forms when multiple people practice presence together often reveals guidance that might remain obscure to any individual walking alone. Think of it like spiritual acoustics. Certain environments naturally amplify sound while others dampen it. Similarly, some relational contexts naturally enhance your ability to hear divine guidance while others create interference that makes clarity nearly impossible. This doesn't require joining formal organizations or abandoning existing relationships. Sometimes the most powerful spiritual fellowship forms organically around kitchen tables, in living rooms, through meaningful conversations with just one other person who shares your commitment to listening within. The essential element isn't structure or tradition, it's shared awareness. Behind the scenes of the greatest spiritual breakthroughs in history, you'll find this pattern repeating. Individuals committed to inner recognition, gathering together, creating an environment where God's voice speaks with amplified clarity to each person present. The impact of this fellowship extends beyond the moments you're physically together. Once you've experienced the multiplication of awareness that happens in authentic spiritual community, you carry that heightened sensitivity back into your individual practice. The revelations you receive alone become clearer, the guidance more precise, because your spiritual receptors have been tuned to a higher frequency through collective presence. Now let me show you how this same awareness transforms what might be the largest portion of your waking hours, your work life. For so many people, professional environments represent spiritual dead zones where divine guidance seems particularly difficult to access. The pressure of deadlines, the complexity of office politics, the constant performance, expectations, all of this creates a frequency of anxiety that completely drowns out that still small voice within. But the fifth daily shift revolutionizes this entire dynamic by transforming work from mere employment into spiritual expression. Kingdom consciousness changes everything about how you engage with professional challenges. When facing a tight project deadline, instead of spiraling into stress about whether you'll finish on time, you pause to recognize the divine reality beyond material appearances. That deadline suddenly becomes an opportunity to witness divine ideas emerging in perfect timing. A difficult colleague interaction that would have triggered defensiveness becomes a chance to perceive the kingdom within both yourself and the other person. The mindset shift moves you from operating as a separate entity struggling through challenges alone to recognizing yourself as a living expression of divine consciousness, bringing spiritual awareness into every task and interaction. If you've experienced moments where creative solutions emerged precisely when work pressure felt most intense, write in the comments, "Divine ideas flow through me." The transformation we've been exploring through these daily shifts leads to something far more valuable than just receiving answers to specific prayers or guidance for particular decisions. As kingdom consciousness matures through your consistent practice, you discover what Smith Wigglesworth called an unshakable peace, a foundational tranquility that doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect. This isn't the positive thinking our culture constantly promotes, where you're supposed to convince yourself everything is fine when it clearly isn't. This is authentic spiritual awareness that remains steady through life's inevitable fluctuations. Here's what this looks like in real experience. When financial setbacks occur, you still take practical action to address them, but without the paralysis of fear. When relationships face difficulties, you engage with them directly, but without the drama of emotional reactivity that makes everything worse. When health concerns arise, you seek appropriate care, but without being consumed by anxiety about outcomes. The hidden truth behind this piece is that it emerges naturally when your consciousness isn't constantly clouded by worry and fear. Divine guidance flows with remarkable clarity through a mind that's at rest, while that same guidance becomes nearly impossible to discern through the static of panic. Behind the scenes of this unshakable peace is something powerful happening in your spiritual receptors. You're not just learning to hear God's voice about individual situations. You're tuning into a foundational frequency that exists beneath all circumstances. It's like discovering a radio station that's always broadcasting, always available, regardless of what's happening in the material world around you. The impact of this discovery on your daily life experience cannot be overstated. You begin approaching challenges from a completely different inner posture, one that maintains connection to divine presence, even when external conditions seem chaotic. Now I need to be completely honest with you about what this journey truly demands, because glossing over this reality would be doing you a disservice. The pathway to this transformation requires something that most spiritual seekers in today's world are simply unwilling to give: consistent commitment regardless of immediate results. Let me be clear about what I mean. This isn't a weekend workshop that produces instant enlightenment. It's not a 21-day challenge that guarantees miraculous breakthroughs. The mindset shift our culture desperately needs is understanding that real spiritual development, the kind that fundamentally reshapes your entire experience, unfolds through consistent small shifts rather than dramatic singular events. Spiritual growth follows natural laws that cannot be rushed or circumvented through any technique or intensity of effort. Think about an oak tree. No amount of impatience, no degree of straining or forcing will make an acorn reach its full stature in a month. It follows a developmental timeline encoded in its very nature. Your consciousness works exactly the same way. Some people begin this practice and experience noticeable changes within weeks. Others work diligently for months or even years before significant transformation appears visibly in their circumstances. The decisive factor isn't spiritual talent or divine favoritism. It's simple persistence, the willingness to continue recognizing spiritual truth, regardless of whether you're seeing immediate external results. The revelations that matter most often come quietly, gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. If you're willing to embrace this journey of patient unfolding, trusting the process even when results aren't immediately visible, write in the comments, "I trust the process." This commitment to patience and persistence doesn't mean you simply sit back and wait passively for transformation to magically happen. That's a crucial distinction many people miss. The mindset shift involves aligning your expectations with natural spiritual development rather than imposing artificial timelines based on cultural conditioning about instant results. Think about a gardener tending plants. The gardener doesn't stand over the seedlings trying to force them to grow faster through sheer willpower or intense effort. Instead, they create optimal conditions: proper soil, adequate water, appropriate sunlight, and then allow the natural process to unfold according to its own timeline. Your consistent practice of recognizing the kingdom within works exactly the same way. Every morning when you acknowledge divine presence before your feet touch the floor, every pause during challenges to return to inner awareness, every decision made from spiritual consciousness rather than fear. These aren't attempts to force spiritual growth. They're creating the perfect environment for your ability to hear God's voice to develop naturally, organically, according to the divine timing already encoded in your spiritual DNA. The impact of this understanding is profoundly liberating because it removes the pressure of trying to manufacture results and replaces it with the gentle power of nurturing what wants to grow. Behind the scenes of what appears to be simple daily practice, there's a sophisticated unfolding happening in your consciousness. You're not building something from scratch. You're removing layers of conditioning and distraction that have covered over what was always present. Each recognition, each return to presence, each moment of choosing spiritual awareness over reactive fear, all of these are like removing another veil, allowing the divine voice that's been speaking all along to become progressively clearer. Now I want to share what might be the most liberating truth of this entire journey. You can begin right now, exactly where you are, with whatever understanding you currently possess. This contradicts so much of our conventional spiritual programming, doesn't it? We've been conditioned to believe that divine communication requires elaborate preparation, special training, or advanced spiritual status. We think we need to master complex theology first, achieve perfect meditation practice, or somehow earn the right to hear God's voice clearly through religious performance or moral perfection. But the kingdom of heaven is within you right now. It has always been there. It was there before you had any spiritual knowledge. It was there through every mistake you've made. It's there regardless of your current circumstances, your past failures, or your perceived spiritual inadequacy. Your ability to hear God's voice clearly isn't something you need to create through effort or achievement. It's something you simply recognize as already present, already speaking, already guiding you from within. The transformation begins not with becoming someone different, but with recognizing who you've always been beneath the surface of material appearances. This recognition can begin with your very next breath. No prerequisites required. No spiritual credentials needed. No waiting for perfect conditions, or until you feel worthy enough. The decision point you face right now isn't whether to embark on an arduous journey requiring special resources you don't have. It's simply whether you'll acknowledge what already exists within you. If this truth is resonating in your spirit, write in the comments, "The kingdom is within me now." What makes this approach to hearing God's voice so uniquely powerful is that it doesn't require you to become someone different or adopt artificial spiritual behaviors. This is where so many traditional religious paths go wrong. They demand conformity to external stereotypes of what a spiritual person should look like, sound like, or act like. But kingdom consciousness works within your unique personality, your individual circumstances, your specific life path. Whether you're naturally analytical or intuitive, extroverted or introspective, detail-oriented or big-picture focused, the divine presence speaks through your authentic nature rather than despite it. You don't need to force yourself into uncomfortable spiritual personas that feel foreign to who you really are. The hidden truth here is profoundly liberating. The blueprint for authentic spiritual connection has been encoded in your consciousness from the very beginning. Your natural gifts, your personality quirks, even what you might perceive as weaknesses or limitations, all of these become channels for divine expression when approached from kingdom awareness. The transformation isn't about suppressing your authentic self to fit some religious mold. It's about recognizing that your true self, beneath all the conditioning and fear, has always been a perfect instrument for hearing and expressing God's voice. Think about the practical impact of this understanding on your daily life. You're no longer straining to be someone you're not, exhausting yourself trying to maintain some spiritual image that doesn't fit. Instead, you're relaxing into recognition of who you've always been at the deepest level. Whether you express spirituality through logical analysis or creative art, through quiet contemplation or active service, through words or actions, it all becomes equally valid when rooted in that inner kingdom awareness. Behind the scenes of every authentic spiritual expression, you'll find this same pattern: people being fully themselves while fully aware of divine presence within. Now let me reveal what might be the most overlooked dimension of this entire journey. The recognition you're developing doesn't happen in isolation. It naturally ripples outward, touching countless lives around you in ways you might never fully realize. As you practice hearing God's voice more clearly through these daily shifts, you become a living example that quietly inspires others to begin their own journey of inner recognition. This isn't about becoming a teacher or preacher unless that's your natural calling. It happens organically through your transformed presence in everyday situations. When you respond to workplace challenges from kingdom awareness rather than reactive fear, colleagues notice something different about you, even if they can't articulate what it is. When you navigate relationship difficulties with that unshakable peace we discussed earlier, friends and family members witness an alternative to the anxiety-driven reactivity that dominates most human interactions. When you make financial decisions from spiritual consciousness rather than scarcity thinking, you demonstrate a different way of being in the world. The revelations others receive often come not from your words but from your example, from witnessing someone who's accessing a source of guidance and peace they didn't know was possible. The catalyst for spiritual awakening in others is rarely elaborate teaching. It's simple authenticity, your willingness to live from the kingdom within, even imperfectly, even inconsistently. If you're recognizing how your own journey might be quietly inspiring those around you, write in the comments, "My transformation touches others." As we come to the close of this exploration together, I'm genuinely grateful you've stayed with me through this entire journey. If these teachings about recognizing the kingdom within have resonated with something deep in your spirit, I'd love to continue walking this path with you. This channel is dedicated to exploring practical ways to experience divine guidance more clearly through everyday challenges and opportunities. Each video builds on these foundations, offering fresh insights into living from spiritual awareness rather than fear and reaction. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The transformation we've discussed today is just the beginning of what becomes possible when you consistently practice presence and learn to hear God's voice with greater clarity. And if you made it all the way to this moment, if you've absorbed these truths and feel ready to begin implementing them in your own life, write in the comments, "This message was meant for me." Your story, your recognition, your journey, it matters. Sharing that you were here and that something shifted for you today might be exactly what another person scrolling through needs to see to begin their own practice. If this conversation created value for you, a simple like on the video helps others who are searching for this same understanding find their way here. It's a small gesture that extends the ripple effect we talked about, allowing divine truth to reach more hearts. There's a video right here that explores how to maintain this spiritual awareness even when circumstances seem to contradict everything we've discussed today. Click and continue with me over there, because what you've learned today deserves to be deepened and sustained. I'll see you in the next one.